You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 282. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, episode 282. How are you? This episode, it is landing right at the week of December 23rd. So if you are listening to it in real time, if you are listening this week, you are likely in the thick of the season. You are probably balancing family time and coordinating with guests and keeping up with the kids out of school. And for many of us, still managing work. And this time of year, it often includes a whole lot of joy and also has the potential for a lot of demands on our capacity, on our mental capacity, emotional capacity, physical capacity, and all of that can leave our brains reeling just a little bit. So if you are finding yourself slightly untethered, or you're feeling ungrounded, or you're just not feeling yourself, please know I see you and you are absolutely in the right place. I literally designed this episode with you in mind. Okay. Now, before we get into today's episode, which is here as a support anytime you need it, I first want to share that the next round of We're Busy Being Awesome, my small group coaching program for ADHD brains, it is right around the corner. So in about a month, we are kicking things off and learning how to plan for your brain, to take action on those plans with less procrastination, and finally check those projects and tasks off the list to get them done. And we do this in a small, tight-knit group of people, 10 to 15 people, and we meet each week for hands-on coaching directly with me as you learn my Plan, Act, Complete framework. And if this sounds like the type of support you're looking for, if this sounds like the experience you want to kick off your new year, be sure to head to the link in the show notes or go to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/group. You can learn more about the program, how it works. I would love to help you work with your brain to get things done and have more time for what matters most to you. All right. So with that in mind, let's dive into this episode, shall we? As I alluded to right at the beginning, this episode is designed as a check-in tool. Okay, it is here as a resource that you can return to whenever you need a pause, whenever you need a reset, whenever you need a reminder that it is okay to breathe and ground yourself, even in the midst of all the hustle of the season. Or maybe you're in Maycember and it's the zaniness that is the end of the school year. Okay, wherever it is that you're listening to this, please know that you can use it as often as you need it. I hope that you will find it helpful in really anchoring yourself, helping you experience this current season with more lightness, maybe even some fun, maybe even a touch of humor. Okay, let's lean into the coming days, the coming weeks, whenever you need to feel grounded, with a whole lot of curiosity, with self-compassion, and with a gentle reminder that, hey, we're all human here. Doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Let's aim for real. Let's aim for enjoying the experience. And today I want to share a simple 6-step process to help you do it. We're diving right in to the action steps. I want this to be quick and actionable for you so you can use it immediately. Step 1, for whenever you're feeling untethered, for whenever you're feeling ungrounded, is to anticipate and acknowledge the reality. So as we begin, I invite you to grab a piece of paper or open the Notes app on your phone, however you like to write things down. And we're going to take a moment to anticipate what likely is going to happen, what likely is coming up over the next handful of days. So this first step is all about getting real with ourselves and acknowledging what might actually happen and likely will happen, even if it's not something we're particularly stoked about. So this list is essentially, what are all the things that you're kind of worried about or anxious about? What are the things you might be dragging your feet when you think about doing them? What has you feeling irritated, frustrated, maybe even a sense of dread? Let's give these experiences just a little bit of space to breathe. Let's write them down. So as you're listening, you could be doing this in real time. Take a few minutes, Write down everything that comes to mind. You could even pause this if you have a long list. That's what I'd be doing right now. Write down what you anticipate will happen or is currently happening or has happened in the past and you're worried it's going to happen again. Let me give you some examples. Maybe you are anticipating your kids arguing, or you're waiting for a comment from your in-laws about the way the house looks or the way your meal is prepared. Maybe you can already see that look that your brother gives you every time that one topic comes up and always manages to press your buttons, right? Whatever those things are, write them down. What are you anticipating inevitably happening? What always happens? What are those things? Now, this is important, okay? I am not having you do this exercise because for some reason I think it's fun to spend time reflecting on negative experiences and thoughts and things like that, okay? No, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing this to make ourselves feel worse or to give ourselves extra stress, okay? Instead, the reason why we are doing this, why we are writing down all of these things that we're worried about, that we anticipate will happen, is we are letting ourselves see these events as predictable patterns instead of allowing ourselves to get totally caught off guard, totally surprised when they happen, even though they usually happen every year. Okay? When we can do this, when we can start recognizing, hey, you know what? These things actually aren't surprising. Nothing's gone wrong here. This is what always happens. It takes off a bit of pressure when we can realize, you know what? My kids fighting, I don't love it, but it is a pretty familiar pattern that on day 4, if they've been off of school for more than 3 days, day 4, they usually start bickering. Okay, these are relatively familiar patterns. And by seeing them clearly, we give ourselves a little bit of power over them. When we name these moments ahead of time, we shift from feeling totally blindsided, totally caught off guard, to being prepared. We can approach these situations with a much clearer mind, maybe even a little bit more patience, a little bit more grace for ourselves and for others. So again, step 1, I invite you to take a moment and write down all those things that you are almost certain will happen. Write them down. Let yourself look at them. This step isn't about changing anyone else, okay? Thinking that they're going to show up differently or act differently, because as I've said many times, we can't control the other humans and it's so annoying, but we can't. But what this is about is freeing ourselves from the shock factor when things play out the way they usually do. When we can acknowledge that and we go, oh, yeah, of course, that's usually what happens. Okay, what do we want to do about that? How do I want to support myself through it? Rather than being surprised. Or, yeah, for sure they're going to say something about my cooking. It's what's happened the last 7 years, right? We don't have to love it. We don't have to think it's okay, but we don't have to be thrown off guard with the shock factor. When we can acknowledge it, we are able to set ourselves up for how we want to navigate it. And that is incredibly powerful because it puts us in the driver's seat. So that is step 1. Anticipate them, write them down. And if they don't happen, amazing. We can be pleasantly surprised rather than shocked that the thing that always happens. Okay? So then we get to step 2, which is to explore the emotional responses, the experiences that you had in the past. So we've written down the things that we are anticipating or worrying about. What we want to do is go a bit deeper and reflect on how these situations have felt in the past. So think back to those past holidays or the family gatherings, okay? When these events have happened before, how did you feel? What came up for you when you were in that experience? When they did comment on the flavor of your stuffing, or your sibling brought up that time that you were late for some celebration and now they use that as a measuring stick for why you're always late. Maybe you felt frustrated. Maybe you felt defensive or embarrassed. Maybe you felt defeated or sad. It's no secret that the holidays can bring up some pretty big feelings. This is very understandable. It happens to so many of us, ADHD or not. I want to say it happens to all of us, but I try and avoid all or nothing. So it happens to so many of us. It makes sense. So let's take a moment to write down some of these emotions. Let's acknowledge them. Allow yourself to get specific. And remember, this is just for you. You don't have to share this with anyone. You can tear it up and throw it away or delete the note or however you're writing it, okay? But let's get that down. Maybe you felt overwhelmed or overstimulated by the chaos and the noise of the past extended family Christmas where there are dozens and dozens of people. Or maybe you were hurt by someone's comment last year at the New Year's party and you were sharing your New Year's resolution and they're like, hasn't that been your resolution for the last 2 years? Maybe you felt hurt there. Or maybe you felt a sense of pressure because you kept telling yourself you have to have everything together. Everything has to be perfect. Whatever it is you're experiencing or you experienced in the past, let yourself acknowledge those feelings. Let yourself name them and name them without judgment. We're just looking back. It's just an exploration. Let's see what's there. That brings us to step 3, which is to ask ourselves, how did I respond when I was feeling that way? So once we name those emotions, let's check in. How did we respond? When those situations happened in the past, what did you do? Did you say something sharp back to your brother? Did you change the subject? Did you shame spiral? My brain loves to go there. Did you go for a walk and call your best friend to vent? Did you make sure that everyone else had a great time while you were silently miserable all day? When you were feeling frustrated, embarrassed, guilty, pressured, whatever, how did you show up? What did that look like? And again, there's no judgment allowed here. We are looking back with curiosity. We're looking back at what we can learn. How did we show up when we felt those big emotions? And what can we learn from it? Maybe there were some things that we did that were actually supportive. Maybe going for that walk, maybe venting to the friend was really helpful. What can we learn from that? Maybe there's some things that were not helpful. We can learn from that too. So as we go through this step, we want to approach it with so much self-compassion, so much curiosity. We are not criticizing past responses, past reactions. It's about learning from them. So make sure we're giving ourselves grace here. We're looking back without judgment. Instead, we're just gathering information about how we showed up when we were feeling a particular way and what helped us feel grounded and had us showing up in the way we wanted and where we can make some adjustments. Okay? We are all learning. We are all beautifully human. The goal here is not to be perfect. It is to understand ourselves a little bit better each time. That brings us to step 4. So we have anticipated the likely events that will happen. We've looked back on the past to see how we've felt, how we've responded in the past times. Now, let's take a moment and actually consider how we would like to show up in these moments. So think of this as an opportunity to imagine how you might show up in the exact same situation when you are well rested and you're not overstimulated, you're not drained, you're feeling good, you're supported, you're grounded. If that exact same situation happened again, how would you want to show up? So maybe you picture yourself laughing at your brother's familiar comment. You're like, yeah, I know, that totally did happen. And you're able to laugh at it because you know internally that you've done a remarkable job at learning how to manage your time or plan ahead or get to places on time or whatever it is that they're commenting on. And you know, you've done that work. And when you're able to take a few breaths, you can see, you know what, this is actually his own stuff. This is his insecurity projecting toward you. What would it be like if you noticed when your brain started getting foggy and what I describe as getting particularly crispy, right? What if when you noticed that was happening because of the overstimulation of the sounds and the smells and the heat from all the people and the kids running around or whatever, even though it's all beautiful and lovely, what if in those moments you let your partner know, I'm just going to step out for a quick walk. I just need to calm down. I need some fresh air. I'll be back in 20 minutes. What would it be like if you gave yourself that space to pause, to let someone know you're just stepping out, you'll be right back because you know what you need? Now, as a caveat, I want to offer here in this step that when we're thinking about showing up as our best selves and supporting ourselves through these different challenging situations, I am talking about doing so with interactions with safe people, okay? People who we genuinely love. We're talking about safe relationships here, about relationships and connections where even when things do get tense or challenging, when we pause, we know deep down that everyone is genuinely doing the best they can with what they have in the moment. Okay. So this is not about forcing yourself into a place of tolerating inappropriate behavior, toxic behavior, gaslighting behavior. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay. I just really want to make this clear. What we're talking about are ways to approach challenging yet super familiar interactions with the people you love who, for better or worse, are just as human as we are. Just as human and imperfect as we are. So in these moments, how do we want to show up? What would it look like to stay grounded, to meet that tough moment with patience or with a little bit of humor? Now, if this sounds tricky, don't worry. Again, it's not about doing it perfect. It's about setting a gentle intention for yourself, a reminder of how you would like to handle the things in a way that feels true to you, in a way that feels supportive. And by anticipating it ahead of time, by walking through the situation, by helping your mind kind of work through it and coach your brain ahead of time, you're helping yourself do that. It makes it that much more likely for you to show up in that way because you're not trying to respond when you're already activated. You've already thought it through. You've already anticipated what you need. So that brings us to step 5, which is to identify your personal needs for support. So now that we've looked at those moments where we expect things to happen and we've imagined how we would ideally like to respond, let's now talk about what we need to make that happen. Because here's the truth. It is completely natural to feel that crispy experience during times of stress. When we are stretched thin, when we are surrounded by people, when we're juggling a lot of responsibilities, when we're out of our regular routine, it is okay to need support to feel grounded. It is always okay, but it is especially okay and understandable when we are out of our regular groove and navigating a whole lot more demand or requests or drain on our executive functions. So take a moment to consider what you need to help you feel your best during these busy, sometimes rather taxing days. Do you need to carve out some additional alone time, those quiet moments, even if they're just 2 or 3 minutes at a time, but that little bit of space to step back and breathe? Maybe you want some help with certain tasks, like getting something ready in the kitchen or someone helping to watch the kids as you're preparing things in the kitchen. Now, if you're not entirely sure what you need to help ensure you're able to show up in the way you want to, do check out episode 247 of the podcast. It's called 8 Discrete Emotional Regulation Techniques. This could be a great place to start to find some different approaches that could work for you to help you regulate. Okay, so I'll link to that in the podcast show notes. But whatever it is you need, let's really get clear on it. And also consider how we can honor that. It's one thing to know what we need. Okay, that's huge. That's amazing. But also, how do we make it happen? Whether it's some sort of a solo act, like taking a walk, putting in your earbuds and listening to your favorite music, stepping outside for some fresh air. Maybe it's recruiting help. Maybe it's asking your kids to fill the water glasses or asking your partner to wrap the gifts. Maybe you're listening to this during that stretch of time between Christmas and New Year's where time does all that weird stuff and you don't know what's up or down. Our time blindness is just off the charts, right? And maybe you realize, you know what I need here is to swap with my neighbor who also has kids and we do afternoon play date swaps. so that we each have some downtime, some quiet time to ourselves. Whatever it is for you, give yourself permission to ask, especially if it's for something that you can't do on your own. Allow yourself to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign that you're not capable. It means that you're human and you want to make things happen. And you want to do so while being resourced and actually enjoying the holidays. So reflect on what would help you feel centered, calm, regulated as you navigate these full days. Think of it as giving yourself the support you need to show up in the way that you want. When we take the time to get clear on these needs, we are, first of all, much more likely to meet them. When we know what our needs are, it's easier to meet them. But then secondly, we are much more likely to move through the season with a little bit more ease. And then finally, that brings us to the last step, step 6, which is to focus on the emotions and the thoughts that are going to help you show up in this way that you want. Let's talk about identifying how we want to feel to show up in this ideal way. So, for example, maybe we want to feel more curious or playful or generous or accepting. Take a moment to imagine how you would like to approach these different interactions. So when you're thinking about how you're showing up, what do you want that emotion to be driving it? Once you have those emotions in mind, whatever they are, accepting, curious, lighthearted, open, once you have those emotions in mind, let's now play with some thoughts to help center you in that emotion. Because let's be honest, it's really easy for our brains to slip back into old habits and old reactions because that's what's familiar, especially when we're feeling a bit dysregulated. Okay. So let's play with some of those thoughts to help center you in this emotion. When we're able to practice them in advance, we can more easily shift that mindset and come back to those emotions that we want to feel to help us be more grounded and intentional as we show up. So for example, if you're aiming to feel curious in those interactions with your brother, maybe you're asking yourself questions. You're thinking, I wonder what's going on for them. I wonder how they're feeling right now. I wonder what they've been navigating. Sometimes a little curiosity can help us step back from the judgment or the defensiveness and instead see things with a slightly softer lens. Or maybe if you want to bring in humor, some lightheartedness in the moment, maybe you try something like, right on time. Just as anticipated, it is day 4. My kids are about to battle it out. My family is so beautifully human, just as I anticipated. I'm telling you, a little humor can go a long way in helping to release some of the tension and really embrace the imperfection that is navigating other humans. Maybe you are looking to practice acceptance. Maybe you try thinking something like, you know what? Nothing's gone wrong here. This is what I anticipated happening. I can handle this. I know what to do. I know how to support myself. I've done this before. I anticipated this. I've got me. These simple thoughts, when we have them at the ready, can be so incredibly powerful. They remind us that we're prepared, that we can handle it, that we are okay. So whatever emotions you want to bring into these moments, play around with a handful of phrases that can help you feel that way. And have them in your back pocket. Have them ready to go. You can handle whatever comes up, and you can do so with the compassion, the humor, the grace that you want. And in fact, as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought about giving yourself grace, okay? And giving others grace. At this time of year, family members are likely to show up with all of their own unique quirks, their own stressors, their own little habits that might feel amplified during the holidays. And just like them, we are also showing up wonderfully imperfect, right? It's a both and. And I know I've said this a lot in the episode, but I'm going to offer it one more time for the brains like mine, okay? There isn't a quote unquote perfect way to show up or to respond or to act. There isn't a perfect way to feel. Perfect isn't the goal, nor is it possible, okay? We are all navigating this season with the capacities we have in this moment. What if we could let that be true? What if we could let that be the relief that it is, that there is no perfect way to show up? What if we could let it be true that these safe people in our lives, although they can certainly push our buttons at times, they are doing the best they can with what they have in that moment, just like us. And again, for those of you like me who may have an easier time giving grace to others than to ourselves, and it's much easier to be super hard on yourself, I also invite you to take a moment to consider the possibility of extending that same level of grace for you. What if everyone, including you, is genuinely doing their best? And perhaps even more challenging, when things don't go as planned, okay? When we snap back at that brother or make the snarky comment to our partner or lose our cool with our kids, can we practice letting each of these messy, imperfect moments be part of being human as this moment of shared experience rather than something that we need to fix because we did it quote unquote wrong? When we can lean into grace for others and grace for ourselves, it's so much easier to transform these holiday moments that might otherwise be remembered as quite challenging. We can shift them into memories where we really showed up and embraced the imperfect and let that be enough. And let that be a powerful memory where we kept showing up, doing the best we could, and we grew through it. And I hope that you have a perfectly imperfect last few weeks of this year. And I will see you back here next week. All right. I am taking you through a powerful end of year reflection that I think you're going to love. So make sure you have subscribed to the podcast if you haven't yet. All right. Tap the little subscribe button or the follow button, wherever it is you're watching or listening. And I'll see you back here next week. And also, while you're there, while you're subscribing, would you be a rock star and leave a positive review if you're listening on the podcast, on your podcast player? Now, if you hate that podcast, maybe don't leave a review, but you're probably not still listening, okay? But if you're enjoying the podcast, would you please tap through and leave those 5 stars, leave a positive review? I would so appreciate it. When you do, you signal to the algorithms that this content is helpful, and that ultimately helps other ADHD brains get these tools easily. And that's my ultimate goal, to help those of us with ADHD live the lives we want to with the supports that actually work for our brains. So thank you for helping me make that happen. All right, my friends, that is going to do it for us this week. And if you are ready to take this work deeper as we move into the new year, if you are ready to take on those projects and manage your time and get things done in a way that works for your ADHD brain, I would love to support you. The next round of We're Busy Being Awesome, my small group coaching program, it is gearing up. We are kicking things off in a little over a month, and you can learn more through the link in the show notes or head to imbusybeingawesome.com/group, where you can get your name on the wait list, because when you do, you will be the first to know when the doors open. Plus, for those of you on the wait list, you not only get dibs to early enrollment, but also some fun bonuses for being an early bird. So be sure to head to imbusybeingawesome.com/group to learn more, get your name on the list. Let's make this coming year one to remember, because it's one where you learned how to truly support your ADHD brain. Also, did you know I have an I'm Busy Being Awesome planner? It's true. If you want my personalized system to work with your brain and get things done, you can order an actual hard copy. It will arrive directly at your doorstep. And when you order it, you get access to my training that walks you step by step through the planning process and offers different ways that you can use the planner to work with your brain's preferred level of support. So if you want to learn more about that planner as well, you can head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/planner, or again, tap through the link in the show notes. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.